In 2025, the United States faces a defining moment, shaken by the assassination of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk. President Donald Trump, in his second term, has announced, via Truth Social, his intent to designate Antifa as a major terrorist organization, igniting a national debate over free speech and the definition of terrorism. The administration claims this is a direct response to rising left-wing violence, though no evidence links Kirk's accused killer to Antifa. As the nation mourns, Americans are forced to confront the tension between liberty and security, and what it means to label a decentralized protest movement as a terrorist threat. To grasp the stakes, we must understand Antifa. This movement, often shrouded in mystery and controversy, has been a focal point in discussions about modern protest tactics and political activism. Antifa is not an organization, but a loose, leaderless movement united by militant opposition to fascism and racism. Unlike traditional organizations, it lacks a formal structure, making it a unique and often misunderstood entity. There's no membership, no central command, just individuals and local groups sharing tactics and ideology. These groups operate autonomously, yet they are bound by a common cause and a shared set of principles. Antifa's roots trace back to anti-fascist activists in 1920s Europe, but in the U.S., it gained prominence after Trump's 2016 election, especially during the 2017 Charlottesville rally. This historical context is crucial to understanding its evolution and current tactics. Their confrontational tactics, sometimes including property damage, set them apart from nonviolent protesters and fuel controversy. These actions are often highlighted in media coverage, contributing to a polarized public perception. This lack of structure makes it nearly impossible to prosecute Antifa as a single entity, raising profound legal and practical challenges. Law enforcement and legal systems struggle to address the decentralized nature of the movement. Ultimately, Antifa is more a shared identity and set of tactics than a cohesive group, complicating any attempt to label it as a terrorist organization. This complexity underscores the challenges in addressing and understanding modern protest movements. Charlie Kirk's assassination became an instant flashpoint, with the Trump administration quickly framing it as the result of left-wing extremism. Officials suggested Antifa's rhetoric and actions created an environment where such violence was inevitable, despite no evidence linking the suspect to the movement. Critics accuse the White House of exploiting tragedy for political gain, while supporters see the move as necessary to protect public figures. The lack of evidence hasn't stopped the association between Kirk's death and Antifa from taking hold in public discourse. For many, the tragedy now symbolizes a broader ideological battle over the limits of protest and the definition of domestic terrorism. The debate has shifted from facts to narratives, fueling polarization. The administration's messaging is clear. Antifa is painted as a violent extremist threat, not a legitimate protest movement. This narrative is consistently reinforced through various channels, including press briefings, media coverage, and official statements. The portrayal of Antifa as a violent entity serves to delegitimize their actions and frame them as a national security threat. Officials cite past clashes, like Charlottesville and the George Floyd protests, as proof of a pattern of violence. These events are highlighted to create a narrative that Antifa is not just a sporadic threat, but a consistent and ongoing danger. By linking these incidents, the administration aims to build a case that Antifa's actions are part of a larger, more sinister agenda. Vice President J.D. Vance and others argue that Antifa's ideology justifies political violence, making it dangerous and subversive. They claim that the group's commitment to radical change through any means necessary poses a direct threat to the nation's stability. This rhetoric is used to rally support for more aggressive measures against Antifa and its supporters. The White House aims to disrupt not just protesters, but also alleged financial backers, treating support for Antifa as material support for terrorism. This strategy involves scrutinizing financial transactions and targeting those who provide resources to the movement. By framing financial support as a form of terrorism, the administration seeks to cut off the lifeline that sustains these protests. This approach reframes financial and ideological support as criminal, even without direct evidence in the Kirk case. The administration's stance is that any form of support, whether financial or ideological, contributes to the perpetuation of violence and unrest. This broad interpretation allows for a wider net to be cast in the fight against Antifa. By connecting isolated acts to a broader movement, the administration seeks to justify sweeping policy changes. These changes are presented as necessary to protect national security and maintain public order. The narrative of a coordinated and dangerous movement helps to rationalize the implementation of more stringent laws and enforcement measures. The narrative sidesteps the lack of direct evidence, focusing instead on a perceived ecosystem of hate. This approach shifts the focus from individual acts to a broader, more nebulous threat. By doing so, the administration can argue for more comprehensive and preemptive actions against those associated with Antifa, regardless of their direct involvement in violent activities. When President Trump called for designating Antifa as a terrorist organization, he ran into a fundamental legal barrier. U.S. law only permits the government to label foreign groups as terrorist organizations, not domestic ones. This distinction is crucial because it reflects the country's deep-rooted commitment to civil liberties and the rule of law. The legal framework was designed to prevent the government from wielding the powerful label of terrorist against its own citizens or political movements within the United States. The First Amendment stands as a shield, protecting even the most radical or unpopular beliefs from government suppression. Criminalizing an ideology, rather than specific criminal actions, would set a dangerous precedent, one that could threaten the very foundation of American democracy. The right to free speech and assembly is not just a legal technicality, it's a core value that has shaped the nation's history and allowed for social progress, even when those ideas were controversial or disruptive. Antifa, by its very nature, is a loosely organized movement with no formal leadership, membership roles, or centralized structure. This makes it nearly impossible to define who belongs to Antifa, or to draw clear lines about who could be targeted by such a designation. The lack of hierarchy and official membership means that anyone could be accused of association, raising serious concerns about fairness and due process. Legal experts warn that using such a vague and sweeping label could open the door to government overreach. It could be used to silence dissent, intimidate activists, or even target political opponents under the guise of national security. The risk of abuse is high, especially in a polarized political climate where definitions of extremism can shift rapidly. The administration might attempt to use existing laws like the RICO Act to prosecute activists by arguing they are part of a criminal enterprise. But proving such a case against a decentralized, loosely affiliated group is extremely difficult. Courts have historically set a high bar for these prosecutions, requiring clear evidence of coordinated criminal activity, not just shared beliefs or protest tactics. Any serious attempt to label a domestic movement as terrorist would almost certainly trigger immediate legal challenges. These cases would likely escalate through the courts, potentially reaching the Supreme Court, where the justices would have to weigh the balance between national security and constitutional rights. The outcome of such a legal battle could have far-reaching consequences, potentially reshaping the boundaries of free speech, protest, and government power in America for generations to come. The president's move has deepened America's partisan divide. Supporters see it as a bold step to restore order and protect conservatives from left-wing violence, viewing Antifa as a genuine threat. They argue that Trump is defending free speech by confronting extremism. Critics, however, see authoritarian overreach, an attempt to silence opposition and criminalize dissent without evidence. They warn this sets a dangerous precedent, allowing the government to label any opposition as terrorism. The administration's perceived double standard, aggressively targeting the left while downplaying far-right violence, fuels distrust. The result? Further erosion of trust in government and deepening polarization. This isn't Trump's first attempt to label Antifa as a terrorist group. In 2020, amid George Floyd protests, he made similar threats, but legal barriers prevented any formal action. The difference now is the context. Kirk's assassination gives the administration a powerful emotional and political justification. The stakes are higher, and the push for action is more urgent, with talk of executive orders and creative legal strategies. While legal obstacles remain, the political will to overcome them is stronger than ever. The administration is prepared to test the limits of executive power, emboldened by national tragedy. The outcome could set a precedent for how future administrations respond to protest movements. Targeting Antifa is part of a broader strategy to redefine how the government confronts left-wing political violence. The White House is preparing new executive orders and exploring novel uses of existing laws like RICO to prosecute protest networks. Civil liberties advocates fear this could justify widespread surveillance and criminalization of political beliefs. The administration's approach aims to disrupt not just violent actors, but also organizers, donors, and anyone linked to protest movements. By labeling the most militant edge as terrorist, the government can chill participation in all forms of left-leaning protest. The goal: weaken opposition and reshape the landscape of American dissent. America stands at a crossroads, debating the future of free expression and protest. Trump's move to designate Antifa as a terrorist group following Kirk's assassination has brought tensions to a head. Supporters see it as necessary for public safety. Opponents warn of a slide toward authoritarianism. Legal battles are inevitable, with the courts set to decide the limits of government power over domestic ideologies. The political fallout will deepen divisions and could spark further unrest. At stake are the pillars of democracy, free speech, assembly, and equal justice. The nation must now decide, in the name of security, how much liberty is it willing to sacrifice.